Well, say, how are you all this evening of your time as you create time to exist? Allow us to begin this interaction this evening of your time with a reminder that we have entitled this interaction Ghost Story in honor of your All Hallows Eve. Now, just one more reminder of the basis of the foundation. Though this may not have anything to do, particularly with the story we will share, the basis and the foundation of your Halloween. Once again, in times past, there was upon your planet, as many of you have realized, many ancient civilizations, one of which you call Atlantis. It has now, down through your ages, been relegated to the idea of a mythological civilization, is still commemorated in much of your literature in various ways, though you have, in many ways, forgotten what some of these commemoratives actually refer to. One idea of the destruction of Atlantis is what you refer to as your biblical flood. The idea also of many of your druidic rituals also harken back to the idea of some of the Atlantean civilizations. Your Egyptian and your Central and South American pyramidal structures harken back to the time of Atlantean architecture, for they were begun in that land, those structures. Also, pertaining to this interaction this evening of your time, in terms of the date of your counting, your Halloween, the three dates, your All Hallows Eve, your November 1st, and your November 2nd, represented in some of your religious circles as the idea of All Saints and All Souls Days, the days following All Hallows Eve. Those 3 days are actually the remnant commemoration of the day before, the day of, and the day after the destruction of Atlantis. In a sense, energy speaking, your November 1st is actually your true New Year's Day, the beginning of the cycle of energy that you are now finalizing upon your planet, because the cycle you are now emerging from was begun long ago in Atlantean time, and now you are shifting it. The idea, as we recognize, therefore, your Halloween, your All Hallows Eve, is that timing when you come, as you say, down to the wire of facing those portions of your consciousness that many of you now, for the several thousand years since the destruction of Atlantis, have submerged into your subconsciousness, have buried deep within you, and covered over with the waves of your surface conscious memory. These ideas now are rising once again from the depths of your being, are coming to the surface to reveal themselves in the knowledge of your connection to the infinite, and the recreation on the surface of your planet in the societies you have now of civilizations and attitudes and creations that are analogous to the height of the civilization on your planet you call Atlantis. You are very much at the same point, once again. Almost the same degree of technology. You now have some differences they did not have. They had some differences you do not have. But you are, relatively speaking, at the same point, the same level of technology, and on the verge, once again, of the same basic decision. Do you use it in positive ways and expand and accelerate to the stars, or do you use it in negative ways and once again submerge yourself under the basis of your consciousness? These decisions are up to you. Although we have once again shared with you many times that it is our perception now that you have decided to use it in a positive way, and that is the reason we can be in contact with you at this time, simply because your vibration is now becoming more and more like the vibration of the worlds that have created peace within their structures of consciousness. But we know that many of you still like to be frightened. Still love to play the ideas out. And this is a very creative thing to do. For if you can find ways to enjoy the fears you have, they can be transformed into positive light. And so, in honor of this idea, And in our willingness to play and participate in your society's customs, we share with you now our version of a little ghost story. If you wish, you may adjust the lighting to what you find appropriate. But we will leave that up to you. It all begins on a world, if you wish, very much like your own. It does not have to be any particular place. It does not really have to be any particular time. And as you say, the subject of the story can be called, for now, Ami. Ami can be, if you wish, male or female. It does not matter. On Ami's world, there is a time and a ritual that everyone must go through before they then undertake for the remainder of their life those ideas that they will be utilizing in service to all, those things that will represent their passage from what you would call childhood to adulthood, similar in many ways to many rituals you may have upon your world. This ritual involves the idea of spending some time in a particular structure. This structure is a many-storied structure, and even though it may not have absolute similarities to the idea of buildings upon your planet, it will do in this story to refer to it as a house. Now, you may wish to call it a haunted house. That is up to you. But in Ami's world, it is called the house of all things. Everyone knows of it. And it is not without some trepidation that individuals take their turns spending a night within the house of all things. And so it came to pass that it was Ami's turn to spend that night in the house of all things. And the teachers and the friends of Ami wished Ami well, all the while, of course, expressing that they were very glad it was not their turn. And so, with perhaps some boldness and yet some trepidation, Ami set off for the house of all things, which stood by itself in the very center of a forest, in its own clearing, in its own meadow. Pleasant enough, perhaps, during the day. Or so, at least, Ami used to think. And as Ami traveled through the forest towards the house, it began to be the time of the setting of the sun, dusk, as you call it. And the closer Ami got to the house of all things, the darker and darker it got. And the animals and the trees, of course, through Ami's imagination, began to take on slightly different aspects. Some of them seeming to point the way toward the house, but very reluctantly. Their branches swaying in the wind, pointing the direction to the house, but all the time bending in the wind as if to say, go back, go back. This is the way you wish to go, but if I were you, I would go back, go back. Well, Ami knew that Ami could go back, but Ami also knew, this was very important, that there were things to look at, things to face, things to understand if Ami were to become what Ami really desired to be. Nowhere but in this house could one accelerate so quickly, it was said. Though everyone who had been in the house was also told, you may share of your experiences if you wish, but not to the point where you will be living those experiences for everyone else. For it is up to everyone to decide that they themselves must go through this house and have their own experiences. And as Ami walked through the forest, Ami dwelt on the many tales that had been told and the many stories that had been shared. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Eventually, however, Ami arrived at the clearing. And there in the clearing, at the very center, was the house of all things. Multi-storied, it stood alone. The wind, the only sound. No light coming from anywhere, any window within the house. And Ami took one look back at the forest, comparing the idea of going ahead or going back. Bolstered up the courage and walked boldly up to the door. And just to be polite, gave a little knock. Just in case. Someone might be home. You never know. The door opened slowly, to Ami's surprise, but there did not seem to be anyone there. Yet Ami took it as an invitation, especially since everyone knew this is what Ami was supposed to do now, and stepped in. The door, you guessed it, closed behind Ami. Ever so gently, not a slam, but with an absolutely precise, definitive, and final click. And in that click, there was an echo of a voice. The way out is up. And Ami did not really understand this, was not even sure Ami had heard this for real. Rubbed out Ami's ears. My imagination getting to me. I am hearing voices already. I don't know if this was such a good idea. Individuals have said they spent whole night in this house. I have just arrived already. I'm hearing voices. I will probably never see the dawn. But if this is to be my fate, so be it. If there is anyone around who decides these things, if it is going to be horrible, please at least let it be quick. But there was no sound and there was no answer. And all was dark, except for, here and there, the very faint light of a moon shining through this window and that, creating even deeper shadows in contrast to the soft, velvety violet light. And Ami began to take stock of the surroundings, allowing the eyes to adjust somewhat. But never completely in focus did all of the room become. Ami wandered through, a creak here, an unknown sound there, a heartbeat. Oh, that must be mine, Ami said. A little louder than usual it is tonight, but it is mine after all. Ami sat in the middle of the first room for a very long time, expecting things to come to Ami, waiting for what might come, with some, once again, amount of dread and trepidation, uncertainty, unknowingness. And finally, after what seemed to be many hours, nothing had happened. Well, maybe it's not so bad after all, Ami said. Maybe I could go exploring this old place and find something interesting that no one has ever found. Perhaps all the others were simply too afraid. But if there really is nothing here, and I am the first to explore everywhere, I can come out perhaps with many treasures. Who knows what I may find under the floorboards and in the shadows that others have been afraid to go into. So Ami began to explore. A door here, a door there, some locked. Oh well, some not. Maybe I wish they were. Chose a door. turned the handle, pushed it open gently. Creak. An old house. Creak. A very old house. And into the room Ami went. Not much light at all. Little cracks here and there, little beams of moonlight. Little motes of dust catching the eye. What was that? Oh, just the light. What was that? Oh, just some dust. Walked into the room, and the door closed behind with the same definite click. Ami turned around and tried it, and it did not budge. No going back, the little click echoed. Only go up. Ami turned around to see if there were any other doorways out of the room, and in the shadows could not see any. Only go up. How can I go up? The room is sealed. There is a ceiling. I do not see any other doors. Ami looked around, staying close to the door through which Ami came, hoping upon hope that it might open again. And maybe it's just because the house is old. There isn't really anything holding the door shut. Maybe it's just because my hand is trembling and too weak to really pull it from being stuck. Maybe. And all of a sudden, a slight sound to one side. A sound like a breath, ever so shy. And Ami turned and could see nothing at first. And then, slowly, something that made Ami recoil against the door. For there seemed to be, far on the other side of the room, very faint, very ghostly, shining with the pale violet light of the moonlight itself, glowing softly, what appeared to be just two legs. Just two legs. As if there could be something standing and watching, but only deigning to allow enough of it to materialize, to at least allow Ami know where it stood. Just two legs, connected at the hip, with nothing above. And Ami looked a little closer to be sure that Ami was seeing what Ami thought Ami was seeing, and recoiled immediately as the legs took a step forward towards Ami. And Ami began to perspire heavily, and the heartbeat was ever more loud. And Ami turned around and faced the door, and began to wish with all the might that was contained in Ami's heart that the door would open, and pulled at the handle and rattle, but it would not give. And as the last rattle died away, the echo once again, the only way out is up. And Ami turned and looked. And to one side, where Ami did not see it before, there was another door. And Ami moved sideways around the wall, staying as far from the legs as possible. And they turned to watch, as if they had eyes, to observe Ami's movement around the room. And Ami made sure Ami's eyes stayed riveted on those legs so they would not run toward Ami. Because Ami thought if Ami could, Ami would run right through the wall if that happened. Ami reached the door. The legs seemed content as long as Ami did not enter further into the center of the room, to remain where they were, just outlining its domain, as it were. Ami reached the other door, and with one hand opened it and looked, and there were some stairs. And quick as you can imagine, Ami bolted through the door and shut it behind. And turned around and saw a very tall staircase, very creaky stairs, and walked up and up and up and up and up, and came to another door, another room. Oh no, not more legs. A house full of legs. What could this mean? How am I supposed to learn from this? I am being scared to death. What is this supposed to teach me? Oh, teacher, I wish you were here now. It was you that told me I must go through this. If I were to become the army I want to be, how does this serve me? Can I really last the night? Oh, well, deep breath, into the room army went. Didn't see anything immediately. Pretty dark, though, just as dark as the other room. Little trickles of light through a very tiny window. Looked around. No legs. All right. Walked into the center of the room, turned 360 degrees, looked around. No legs. Oh, better and better, army thought. Explored the room a little bit more, peered into the shadows as far as army dared, looked up to the little window, stood looking up the shaft of light, as if somehow army might be able to leap up and squeeze out that little window to get outside into the moonlight, where army knew it would be safer. And all of a sudden, standing there, watching the light, army felt all of the skin on his back. As if something had caressed ever so gently. And took a gulp. No, just my imagination. The breeze through a crack in the floor, and turned around and jumped and stood frozen in the shaft of moonlight, and there floating nearby in the darkness, glowing ever so gently, a floating pair of arms, reaching out towards army, who now began to shake, who began to step back, able to uproot one foot and then the other, as if they were glued to the floor, and becoming stuck again and not taking another step, and staring at the arms that reached out, groping, grasping for army. And just beyond the arms to one side, army caught in the faintest glow of the light another door. Army wasted no time. Army ran. And did not stop the beating of army's heart so loud until the next door was slammed securely behind. And this time, by now, army was becoming weak and frightened and wishing there were a window large enough, for now army was certain army would jump, even if it meant army's death. For army did not want to spend another moment. And yet once again, in the slamming of that door and the clicking of the lock, there was the small voice. The way out is up. I'm going mad, army thought. Truly mad. Perhaps I will simply become a resident of this house. Perhaps this is how this house has become so haunted. I am seeing all the mad people that have been here before me, who have never escaped, and neither will I. Woe is me. But there ahead of army was yet again another staircase. Well, if I am going to die, it might as well be now. And up the stairs army climbed. And with each step, army's legs became heavier and heavier and heavier, until at the very top, Ami wondered why the floor underneath did not give way, and Ami didn't go crashing through. Ami looked at the door at the top of the stairs, the same bright brass knob, waiting for the touch of Ami's hand, as if it had always been waiting for the touch of Ami's hand, to turn it. And with leaden arms, Ami reached and felt the smooth coldness, the coldness that Ami thought that any moment would signal the coldness that Ami's body would be in death if Ami walked through that door, and turned it. Click. A very, very old door. Very rusty. What strength Ami had left was necessary, all of it, to muster, to push the door open. For Ami knew it was the only way. There was no going back. And into the room Ami went. And the door closed behind. Click! And the echo died away, but Ami did not hear. For Ami's senses now draining, and Ami's heart was in the throat. For ahead of Ami, floating in the center of the dark room, was only a heart, a beating heart. Ami could not think. Ami could not move. Ami felt dark death wrapping around and covering Ami's eyes. Ami withdrew and curled into a little ball on the floor and felt the eternal night descend. But then, in the very depths of Ami's despair and fear and darkness, that little voice echoed again. Up, Ami. The way out is up. I am on the top floor, Ami cried. Up, Ami, up. The way out is up. What do you want from me? Ami cried. Yet Ami found strength coming back. A strength that, if anything, even if it was anger, even if it was defiance at Ami's predicament, was allowing Ami to regain senses. And rising slowly, Ami saw the heart. And the heart beat and glowed fiercely and brightly. And Ami did not feel as scared. Not as scared. And felt a warmth from the heart. Who are you? Said Ami. Up, said the heart. Up. I do not understand, said Ami. You will, said the heart. You will. The heart vanished. And the door behind Ami clicked open. And Ami saw light from below. In a house that had had no light up to that point. And descended the staircase and walked into the room, peering around the corner of first, of course, looking for the arm that had groped for Ami's throat, and saw nothing. And walked into the room, saw nothing. The room was lit, looked one wall, another wall, and the third wall, and froze, and then recovered. For there on the far, far wall was a mirror. And it was only Ami's arms in the moonlight that had scared Ami. And went to the other door, and down the stairs as fast as you could imagine, into the other room, where there was now light, and once again, the mirror on the far wall. It had only been Ami's legs that had trembled and turned as Ami turned around the room to seek escape, shining the reflection of the moonlight off of Ami's legs into the mirror. And Ami went to the front door, and it opened easily, and out of the house of all things to stand in the meadow and look at it from afar. And the night was glorious, and the moon shone brightly, and Ami was happy he had lived. And all of a sudden, a thought struck Ami. But wait. In the first room had been the reflection in the mirror of my legs. In the second room had been the reflection in the mirror of my arms. But no mirror can reflect a heart. What was that? What was that? Then there was a spirit. I wonder if I'll ever know. And it came to pass that Ami lived a full life, doing all the things that Ami desired to do, in being of service, in joy and love, and now and then pondered back to the house of all things and the heart, and wondered, but found no answer, could not understand how the house had been able to show a heart, to see through Ami's body, to show Ami's heart, if that is what it truly was. And so it came to pass that in the living of a full life, it came time for Ami to die. And in passing from the physical to the spirit world, Ami was met by Ami's teacher who had preceded before. How nice to see you again. And now we are spirits, and hearkening back to the time of the house of all things, I can see in that sense that spirits are not things to be feared. And funny you should mention that, said the teacher. Funny you should mention the house of all things. For just as it was in physical life, just as the house of all things represented a passage that each living being must go through, the house of all things is something that you as a novice spirit must also play a part in serving. How so? You mean now that I'm dead I have to go back there? Just for a moment or two. Just to be as a guide of service in love and in light. For it is the house of all things, and by definition it bridges both worlds. And it is a doorway and a passage that not only the living in life, but the living in death must also participate in. Very well, I will do what I must, said Ami. So go, said the teacher. There is someone waiting now. And so Ami went and entered the spirit side of the house of all things, but of course not through the front door, through the top, into the attic. And as soon as Ami was in place, the sound of a click, and Ami turned and saw Ami in life, being viewed by Ami in death. And Ami understood. I am the heart I saw. I am the guide I saw so long ago in life. my own self in the future, radiating the love, the self-love it would take for me to live the life I desired to live. I saw my own heart truly, but not reflected in any mirror of physical design, reflected in the mirror of spirit. To give myself the reminder that I am loved. Ah, me. We thank you. We thank you for allowing us to participate in the unlocking of yourselves to yourselves, in the revealing of yourselves to yourselves. For that is what the gate is all about. The gate you call All Hallows Eve, represented by the vibration of the number 13. For 13 is the gate of transformation, and death is only life in a different form.